people sometimes say, how do we even know we exist? Like sometimes it's like, how do you know you're even here? You know, oh, that's a good deep thought. How do we even know we're here at all? Like here as in this, like, how do you say it? In this understanding of the world, like with the stuff, okay? I'm here in storage unit, the buckets, the walls. And how do I know I'm actually in a storage unit with the buckets and the walls, right? I don't know if the buckets aren't some sort of manifestation of something else, just a representation, a symbol, or a shadow of its true underlying nature, right? Plato's cave. But it could be like Don Juan, you know, the true underlying nature of the physical reality is more like vibration, and we're like, you know, there's like underneath, there's like what we see, I see with my eyes. Well, not really. I see with my entire awareness, my whole body and everything. But say just if we're just taking sight, my eyes are seeing it. Like that's not the true actual nature of the thing, right? It's just an interpretation. It's what it, the matrix. It's just electrical symbols interpreted by the brain, right? We've known this since, I don't know, 1999. When did the Matrix come out? Okay. So it could be like the Matrix, right? We don't know, like, how do we know that we're really here? Like, okay, so we don't know that, but we do know that we exist. I mean, we are here somewhere. Like we might not know that we're here, but we know that we are. And because we know that we're somewhere, but do we know that we're anywhere at all? Am I happening in the world, or is the world happening in me, right? Is this a dream, a construct of consciousness? It is somewhat likely. I would say it is just as likely that we are a dream, or we're God's dream, or it's just somehow just made up completely by intelligence. So there is no temporal. It's only spiritual. It's all spiritual. It's all just thought and vibration, something like that. Could be. I would say it's more likely than that it's actual like stuff. I think the stuff is a manifestation of thought and vibration that's inherently and intimately connected with thought and with our unique and collected, organized, conscious understanding of the stuff. It's like the stuff understanding itself, you know, awareness for the sake of just being aware to understand more about awareness. We become less aware to become more aware. I don't know. Okay, so I would say that it's pretty likely, and I mean, Jesus said that there is no temporal, it's only spiritual. Like, I would say that's pretty likely. You
should die, and then somebody should have a baby, and then it should be you.
Interesting. Yeah, so then there's a question of like, well, where does our individuality, like we're organized now in this way, where does that go? And it's like, well, our physical body spreads out at death, right? We get consumed and masticated back into the planet by like each individual bacteria, cell by cell. We turn back into what we came from. Is that like our consciousness? Is that a representation of our consciousness, of how we go back into the whole? You know, do we not retain our individuality, but yet we still retain the same thingness that we always were? We still retain the same thing, and our perspective like went to where it was intended in the first place, in the original idea of like we should dream and come up with consciousness so we can understand better. Like the whole point of that is to understand awareness better, and so we're doing that. Yeah, we don't get to retain our individuality, but we are us. We are the thing. Like that's what we wanted. That's the whole point. But could we retain separateness? Probably. We could just choose to if we wanted to. So, yeah, but I think sometimes when I talk about this, I'm like, with people, I'm going to be like, oh, look how smart I am and how dumb they are. A lot of the question is, well, how do we know we even exist? Because I am. I mean, the basement bottom level of just pure understanding is that I exist. I don't know if I blink out when I die. I don't think that I do. I don't think that's logical. I think if you've given some thought to it, like, it wouldn't make sense to you that that would be a thing. Not that you're dumb, but just that, I mean, do you ponder this like day to day? Maybe so. I don't know. Maybe you have a better understanding than me and you've understood higher and more. It could be. It could be I'm lower on the path, but don't scoff at me. We would never look back along the path to those just starting out with scoff and scorn. We never look down our noses at people who know less than us. That's not the way we do it in human society, is it? So it's not ideal. Okay, watch out.
Can I go on?
No, it's too tall. Okay. So, yeah, we're all just going along trying to figure things out. And like, I look down my nose, of course, that's the judgment of like, oh, they just don't understand. Like, what do you mean, do we even exist? How is that even a question you have? I mean, it's a good question. I've had that question. I mean, of course. But I feel like I just understood almost right away that I exist. That was during the headless time. I feel like I had that question and it was pretty quick. Like within a month, maybe. Quick, maybe days, maybe a week. I don't know. I had the question, like, how do I even know that I exist? Because the question is, so I think it's called solipsism, where it's like, how would you know if literally you're just in a dream? Like, it's all the people all around you are just figments of your imagination. And it's really you that's the real person and everyone else is fake. I think that's solipsism, something like that. Solipsism. And I don't remember. I had that thought during the Don Juan time. It was before I joined the church, for sure. I think it was in high school. It was probably around the culty time when I was looking at cults, like the cult situation. I was obsessed with cults, and I had this free period at school. And it was a study hour. It was done in the library. Instead of studying what I was supposed to study, of course, I just got really interested in cults. And so I just read like every book in the library they had on cults. I learned about Jonestown. I learned about Waco, Texas. I learned about, all that stuff. And that was kind of pre-internet-ish. I want to say the internet existed. I had a Hotmail account, but like I had like a MySpace. But like, I don't know. It was just different. It's not like you could just look up or like YouTube binge watch all these things on cults. There wasn't so much content. Like, anyway, I read all I could. I was obsessed with cults. And I think the cult phase was during, because I was questioning too. I was seeking. I was like trying to figure out what's going on in reality. And the solipsism thing came up. I learned what the name of it was, I think in a philosophy class in college. But that's the idea. I thought for quite a while that maybe I'm the only one that exists in reality. And it's kind of a sad and lonely, depressing idea. It's kind of freeing. Like there's some give and take to that idea, like good and bad. Anyway, there's that though. Like, how would you know if the others exist? But I think, so I had this idea, and then it's like, well, how do I know even I exist? What if I don't even exist? How would I know? Well, and that would like pretty early on, that's when I got into headless. Somehow like headlessness came across my table. It was on the internet because it was the day of the internet. Like it did exist. And it was kind of like scary to look at this stuff because I'd always been Christian. And my mom was like pretty heavily against witchcraft. And I had originally gotten into witchcraft from the internet. So I was a little scared to like, what if I'm dabbling in things I shouldn't learn? I shouldn't know. Like, what if it's just dangerous just to know? And I kind of thought, well, I mean, if it's true, it's true though. Like, why is knowledge, like, I didn't really think this, but now I think that like, that's ridiculous. Like knowledge, there's nothing dangerous about knowledge unless it's deceptive. Like it can be dangerous. It can be used inappropriately, but I feel like knowledge just in and of itself, if it's truth, it's freeing. Anyway, you have to be careful of being deceived. And I think that's what she's worried about deep down, is that the deceiver could be using knowledge to deceive. And like the internet saying witchcraft is good could just be a giant deception. Anyway, so I had the idea, like, how do I even know I exist? And this is somewhat of a crisis. This is somewhat of a problem. Like, if you don't exist at all, like, what's the point of this? But anyway, pretty right away, it's like, oh, duh. How do I know I exist? Because I'm the one here worrying. Like, what the crap is that thing that's here worrying whether or not I exist if I don't exist? Like, what's doing the worrying that, like, I'm worried that I don't exist, right? I'm, like, sad about it. But, like, what's that thing that's sad then? The existing being, obviously, duh. Like, I obviously exist. But in what capacity? I don't know. Do I exist individuality after death? I don't know. Do I exist after death? I would say it's likely. I would say it's extremely unlikely that I do not, or like existence does not go on after death. Like, what are the odds that all exists in you? That would be solipsistic, right? Solipsistic. It would be a view of the world that the universe all resides in you. If this whole thing that's existing right now that you're witnessing just completely goes away at death, like it no longer exists because you no longer exist, I don't know, somehow that like makes sense that would not be a true reality.
Mom.
Consciousness is weird. So if you're asking the question, how do I know that I even exist? I think that's a really good indication that you are like asking questions. Asking questions is a good indication that you're asking questions. Duh. Yeah, I mean, it's dumb, but it's true. Like, I'm just trying to say, I'm not scoffing and scorning. I'm not looking down the path and scoffing and scorning because you're asking a dumb question. It's not really a dumb question. It's a question everyone has to ask in order to get an answer, because God is consensual, right? It's a consensual thing. It's like, I need to ask the questions to get the answers. And it's also, well, yeah, it's consensual. I'm not going to be given an answer I don't ask a question to, but like figuring out what questions to even ask, that's hard. Like, how would you even know to ask that question at all? Well, because you're a conscious existing being and you're curious. So asking the question of whether or not I exist is a good question, because you can't actually answer the question you didn't ask. So even if you intuitively understand, do I exist? Have you ever truly asked yourself the question, but do I even exist? How would I know if I exist? I think the question itself, like asking honestly yourself, like as deep as you can, ask, like actually be curious if you exist. I think it's important. I also think it's important to resolve right away. And when people are telling you, go to look at headless.org, I think you should try it. When people are like, you should read Journey to Ixtlan, I think you should try it. I think just continually to ask, well, I don't know. If only God would tell me the answer. Like, God's telling you. I'm telling you. He's telling you through me. Like I understand this question intimately. I really understand this question. Please just try doing the things. If you don't believe in Journey to Ixtlan because you think it's witchcraft, if you don't believe in witchcraft because you think it's evil, just go to the Bible then. The Bible's saying the same thing. That's what I really like about the church too, is the 14th article of faith. What is it? We believe what is in anything lovely, virtuous, lovely, or of good report or praiseworthy. We seek after these things. If there is anything virtuous, lovely, or of good report or praiseworthy, we seek after these things. If there is anything virtuous, lovely, or of good report or praiseworthy, we seek after these things. Or, not and, or. If it is virtuous, we seek after these things. If it is lovely, we seek after these things. If it has a good report, we seek after these things. If it's praiseworthy, we seek after these things. You know what's praiseworthy? Journey to Ixtlan. You know what is of good report? Journey to Ixtlan. You know what is virtuous? Headlessness. And what does virtuous mean anyway? I don't know. Don Juan stuff is not as virtuous. does not obey the law of chastity and doesn't recommend it. He does, but not for the reasons the church says, not for reasons of the bonding or the family, or because of reasons of trust issues and love. He commands chastity. I don't know if commands is the word, but like suggests, strongly recommends, based on the necessity of seeking power, but it has nothing to do with like, because then you will feel unloved. If someone doesn't obey the law of chastity, or like it won't be bonding or binding. It won't be like there's another reason for it. Like he would. So maybe this stuff is virtuous, I guess. I wonder if virtue, like when I hear virtue, I think of sexual purity, like sexual cleanness. Could be a hygiene issue. Could also be a power issue. But I don't think it's a bonding issue. I don't think it's about love. I think love transcends that. So anyway. It's an energy issue for Dongwon. But yeah, so I guess it's virtuous too. Maybe it is an and thing. I think it's the 14th and the 12th. How many articles of faith are there? 14, 15? I think it's the last or one of the last. And it says, if there's anything lovely, if there's anything virtuous, lovely, or good report, or praiseworthy, we seek after these things. I think those are all of them. I think that's it. There's a song, so it helps you to remember. But I think the song can also dull it down. Like the song helps you to remember it so you can ponder it later, because when you're dulling it down, if it's just a song, then it just kind of sounds and it doesn't actually mean anything. I think as a kid, like the Pledge of Allegiance, which just sounds to me, I didn't even understand. I just like the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And it's just the sounds. It's like a sound repetition. It's just like, doesn't mean anything. And I think that's very, very awkward and strange that as adults, we don't say the pledge. Everyone's so up in arms. The country's going to crap because they took God out of the schools and they don't say the pledge anymore. It's like the pledge. I mean, the reason they took the pledge out is because they took God out of schools, right? But the Pledge of Allegiance, we don't ever say as an adult. I don't think I've ever said the Pledge of Allegiance as an adult. Maybe at a sporting event or something, but sports, why would that be? Unless sports are some kind of war symbolism. That would be weird. But I think that I don't think I've ever said the pledge outside of as a small child. And like, think about what you're doing. You're pledging allegiance to a country. It sounds very warlike. It sounds very militaristic, or very like, as a child, you don't know what you're consenting to. It's uninformed consent. I stopped saying the pledge as a teenager because of the God things. I was like, separation of church and state. I'm not saying the pledge. It says God in there. I'm doing that. But now I'm saying, what the crap? That doesn't matter at all. I don't know. Or like, God's good or whatever. But like, saying the pledge in schools is disturbing also, because you're pledging allegiance to something as a child. You're not supposed to have that kind of authority over your own life, right? I can't like vote. So how am I pledging allegiance to anything? I feel like that should be taken out of the child realm. Pledging allegiances should be taken out of the child realm, I would say, don't you think? Pledging allegiances to some kind of political situation should not be a child's position to do at all. We should take the pledge out of schools, because making political allegiances as kids is weird. It's very weird, especially when they can't make like marital allegiances or anything else. They can't do anything else in their life legally. They get baptized into the church, I guess, at 8, but they can't. Pledging allegiance to a country just sounds very like childhood war. Like, it sounds cringy. I don't like it. I also kind of think we should take God out of schools, mostly because God is so misinterpreted and it's just like, just making it bad. But I think that, I mean, obviously, I don't know. Everyone just needs to figure out their own morality, I guess. But the pledge, like, it's super, super weird that we're having children pledge allegiance. And Yeah. But not passing judgment. Not passing judgment on the people making children and thinking that's a good idea. I can see how you would think it's a good idea. I've had it explained to me many times. I don't need it to be explained to me anymore. Like, you can explain to me if you want, but I've already had it explained to me. It still seems weird. And do it if you want, though. Like, I'm not judging. I am judging. I'm judging for myself that is an incorrect action for me to do. And I'm definitely encourage my kids to think of it as a weird thing they're doing. But, I mean, you can do it if you want. You can make my kids do it if you want. I mean, while they're in your building, do it. It's part of the culture. You can do that. We can talk about it at home. And yes, the question of, do I even exist? Good question, but resolve it. Please resolve it quickly. Go think about things, look at things, think about thinking. If you just think about thinking, you automatically understand that you exist. Like, there's no one there to think if you don't exist. So stop. Stop with the nonsense. But yes, ask the question, I guess. I don't know. And now watch, I'm wrong. Watch, we don't exist. And I'm just like, da-da-da, I'm so smart. And really, we don't exist. That would be funny. I mean, God's ironic. He's funny. He does jokes. That's the thing. Also, like, the nature of God, God's just sitting there in a white robe, just being peaceful all the time. I think God's freaking funny. God, to me at least, he plays jokes. We play jokes on each other. I joke around a little bit. He gets jokes. Sometimes I laugh because there's a private joke going on. Like, I'm at the grocery store and I've been having some kind of judgment. And then that lady that I'm judging, not the lady that I was judging, but the circumstance happens in just this exactly perfect way. And I just have to laugh because I know God's just playing a joke. It's just like how God interacts and how we all interact is just so confusing and so complicated and so weird. I don't think we can put God in a box and say, God's doing these things. Like, we don't know. I don't know what God's prerogative is, what God's doing. God is likely us, just split up into a million billion pieces, and we're deciding if we want to stay individual or want to go back to the whole. That's what I think we're doing here. He's our literal father, but more like a bacteria with a dividing, right? Consciousness dividing. We're a little piece of God. We are a little piece of God. Our literal father, our literal parentage. Father, mother. Is a bacteria really male or female? Like, male and female has to do with reproduction, right? And if God is self-reproducing, if we are literally his children, consciousness, the organized intelligence is the consciousness, is where pure intelligence organized. Did we literally split off and divide from him? And then, like the Jesus thing, does that make it permanent? I think we could choose to have it be permanent, or we could choose to go back to the whole. But then we go on. Do we become literal gods? Like, then what's the next cycle? So here we are. Maybe that's the reincarnation, as we are now individual. We've chosen that as a whole organism. I want the individualities. That was fun. It was cool. Now here we are. And is that going to happen to us next? The eternal progression, is that what it is? And we cull and we don't want all the attributes of our character, right? The wheat and the tares. So if you want your individuality, maybe you need to start cultivating your attributes to be something desirable. The attributes of patience, long-suffering, calmness, happiness, peace. These are the kind of things we like. Is that just for human survivability, though? Do we only like that on a bodily level? Like, I like peace because and it's more likely to survive. Or just like more pleasant to be around. Maybe both. Anyway, in heaven, maybe attributes like hate and jealousy, there could be a place for that. Because maybe we do need both. Who knows? And that's why I can't judge. My brother is, well, he's going to hell for sure. Because, like, I don't know. I'm not God. And maybe, like, when I finally, it's my turn to do that, to divide into the unique individuals. And I can decide what I want mine to be like. Okay, well, if you steal, then I'm not going to choose you. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's a complete act of love. Maybe everyone is saved. Jesus saves everyone. I don't know. There's something about it, though. There's some kind of like selection process. It would be really hard to be in eternity with people who are stealing. Like, it would just be really annoying. If that's going to be the thing forever, like, eventually we just would want to move past that. Maybe that's why the 3 kingdoms come in. It's like, okay, people who steal, you're going to be in this one. It's still going to be really good. You're still going to like it. But you're stealing, and so you've got to be with all the other stealers. You guys can steal from each other. There's a second one. It's like, okay, you guys are mostly good. But you just, like, you don't have a forever family, and you didn't get into, like, the Mormon stuff, basically. So then there's the Mormon heaven, which is the very best of all. They call it sad heaven. That's funny. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think our consciousnesses will understand. Like, we no longer have those animalistic attachments, the carnal attachments to people, the emotional addictive attachments to people, or the pity. I think the Don Juan stuff is true in the self-pity thing. Like, we need to stop having self-importance. Once we lose self-importance and we lose self-pity, then we also no longer will pity others. Pitying someone, it doesn't help them at all. And it doesn't really help you. It doesn't help anything. It's just gross. So, like, compassion, maybe not. Empathy, yes. Understanding, yes. But pitying someone because they're making poor choices, I don't know if we will consider that in heaven. I don't know if I think we consider it now because we're trying to figure out whether or not that's a thing. But I think in heaven, like, once we evolve enough to understand and progress enough to understand everyone's situation, I think that we will no longer pity. We have what we have. We're given what we're given. We make with it what we make with it. It's the talents thing. It's like the Lord gave this one 10, this one 5, this one 2, this one 1. And the guy who had 1 doubled it. The guy who had this doubled it, whatever. Someone hid theirs in the sand or whatever. And he was like, take it from that one and give it to these others. Don't just hide in the sand. Like, you need to be doing stuff. It's like no pity, right? The place of no pity.